They buried him in white. Not the crisp, regal kind he wore to preach, but the soft linen kind morticians dressed the dead in. The choir sang through tears. His wife and son, already in the ground. 3 caskets. 1 sermon. The man once called a voice of God in flesh was now silent forever, murdered on a Sunday, in his own pulpit, by a woman who once called him her soul's husband. But before the blood dried on the church carpet, before the prayers turned into whispers, there was a look in his eyes as he lay dying. A single word on his lips. Cherise. Sunday morning sunlight spilled across the red brick facade of Eastland Deliverance Church, catching the silver trim of Sister Noreen's Cadillac as she parked. The scent of hairspray, cologne, and coffee filled the lobby. Inside, everything felt rehearsed and holy. Soft organ notes from the sanctuary, children laughing in the Sunday school corridor, ushers pinning silk boutonnieres to their lapels. The Bracey family arrived just after 10:30. Vanessa stepped out first, elegant in her deep purple dress and matching hat. She adjusted the tie on her son's shirt, then turned to smile at her husband. Pastor Lionel Bracey stood tall, Bible in hand, his voice warm as he greeted an elderly member by name. No one watching that morning suspected anything other than grace would unfold. In the sanctuary, the choir lifted their voices high. Cherise was not among them. Her absence was noticed only by the alto 2 rows behind where she usually stood. But the show went on. It always did. Pastor Bracey ascended the pulpit just before 11. He touched the corner of the MAC and leaned in. "Before we begin," he said, "turn to the person beside you and tell them, you're exactly where God needs you to be." A murmur of comfort swept the pews. Jalen Bracey, seated 2 rows back, glanced at his phone, then tucked it quickly into his suit jacket. His mother caught the movement and gave him a silent, practiced stare. Then she reached for his hand. "No distractions today," she whispered. "Your father has a message." Cherise sat in the far rear of the sanctuary, hidden behind a group of visiting deacons. A thin shawl covered her shoulders, and her dress, soft peach, delicate, didn't match the black leather boots on her feet. Her hands trembled slightly. Under her coat, the cold metal kissed against her thigh. The pistol was small, black, and loaded. She looked forward. Her eyes didn't blink when Lionel started to preach. 10 minutes in, Lionel's voice took on that rise, the kind that made people shout amen before they even heard the end of his sentence. "Sometimes," he said, pacing across the pulpit, "God has to break us to bless us. Sometimes the rain is not punishment, it's preparation." Vanessa nodded gently. Jalen leaned forward. "And Cherise?" She stood. A few heads turned, but no one reacted beyond polite curiosity. She was just another latecomer, perhaps looking for a better seat. She walked slowly down the aisle, then stopped. Lionel paused. His eyes caught hers. Only for a second. There was a flicker of something, a twitch in his jaw, a subtle widening of his eyes. Vanessa saw it too. She looked back. Recognition struck. Cherise raised her hand. "Wait," Lionel started. His voice cracked. Mid-word. Cherise stepped forward and pulled the trigger. The first shot echoed like a thunderclap. Lionel staggered backward, a bloom of red spreading fast beneath his clerical robe. Screams tore through the air. Vanessa shot up from her pew, grabbing Jalen's arm. "No, no, no," someone yelled. "Gun! Gun!" The second shot caught Vanessa in the ribs. She crumpled where she stood, her hat rolling down the aisle like a wheel knocked loose. Jalen screamed, "Mom!" His voice was so sharp it cut through the chaos. Cherise's eyes didn't waver. She turned the barrel toward Jalen. "Don't!" Lionel cried, voice choking with blood. It didn't matter. A third shot rang out. Then silence. Not the kind of silence that falls naturally, but the unnatural void that follows trauma. People pressed themselves to the floor. Choir members sobbed behind the organ. Deacon Hill clutched his chest, muttering prayers. Cherise stood, her breath shallow. She didn't run. She simply lowered the weapon and walked back down the aisle. As she passed the pews, someone whispered her name. Her shawl fell from her shoulders like petals from a dying rose. Outside, The cold air did not calm her. She got into a parked car and drove off, plates removed, windows down. She was gone before the first squad car arrived. Inside, Lionel bled from the mouth. He had tried to crawl to his wife and son. One hand was stretched toward them, but it never reached. The blood trail traced a broken path between the pulpit and the pew. Paramedics fought to keep him alive. Oxygen mask, chest compressions, 4 bags, a whirl of white uniforms and red-stained gloves. He gripped the arm of a female EMT, pulled her close, whispered one name, Cherise. Then he went still.
If you're enjoying this story, kindly do us a favor and subscribe to our channel. It is free and won't cost anything, but it means the world to us. We're just a small channel trying to grow. Thank you, and back to the video.
Detective Desmond Rourke arrived just as the 3rd ambulance was pulling away. The chapel still smelled of perfume and gunpowder. He walked past blood-slick hymnals and overturned offering baskets. His eyes landed on the 3 shell casings near the pulpit, spaced too evenly to be panicked. These weren't wild shots. They were placed. Witnesses were too shaken to be coherent. Everyone seemed to say the same things. She walked right in. Nobody knew what was happening. She wasn't supposed to be here. A teenage usher said she recognized her, that woman from the choir. Another insisted she saw her mouth something before pulling the trigger. Rourke took notes silently, his pen steady. But in his mind, a question echoed louder than any testimony. Why would someone kill a pastor, in front of his congregation, and then take out the wife and child too? The blood told a story. So did the pulpit's cracked wood, dented from a falling body. Rourke knelt beside the choir director who had watched it all unfold. She knew them, the man whispered, rocking slowly. She didn't just shoot. She chose. Outside, the press had already arrived. Headlines were being written as bodies were still being tagged. Rourke ignored them. Instead, he turned back inside, into the sanctuary, his footsteps echoing alone now. He looked at the corner where the shooter stood. Then at the broken bodies she left behind. And he said nothing, not yet. But inside, he was already unraveling it. Detective Desmond Rourke sat in the chapel's back office, the door closed, the sounds of a weeping congregation muffled beyond it. He studied the church's security system footage on a dusty monitor. Grainy, no audio. But it showed exactly what witnesses described. A woman in a peach dress walking calmly down the aisle, lifting her hand, 3 bodies falling in sequence. He paused the footage right at the moment Lionel made eye contact with her. That blink. That moment of recognition. That split second when fear and familiarity blurred. Rourke leaned in. "Who were you to him?" he murmured. The name Cherise hadn't meant much at first. The EMT who heard it assumed it was a final gasp, a prayer. But Rourke was a man who trusted last words, especially those that escaped a dying man's lips with blood still rising in his throat. He sent 2 officers to the choir database. There were 6 women named Cherise on the roster over the past 4 years. 5 had alibis. 1 didn't. Cherise Halston, age 32, former alto in the worship team. No current address listed. She'd stepped down from the choir 9 months ago. No explanation given. Rourke checked the exit form. It had been signed by the pastor himself. Scribbled quickly. The reason box left blank. He traced her last listed number. Disconnected. Her emergency contact. A cousin who hadn't heard from her in months. She was always intense, the cousin said. Real, spiritual. But sometimes she got it twisted, like God was talking only to her. At Vanessa Brace's workplace, her assistant handed over a folder she had requested printed the Friday before the murders. Inside were bank statements, a draft separation letter, and a list of phone calls, most to a number that matched the disconnected line on Cherise's choir form. Vanessa had known. Rourke walked through the Bracey home that evening. It was clean, too clean, a family that lived in performance, not just peace. Picture frames lined the hallway. None out of place. But in the nightstand beside the bed, hidden beneath devotionals and a silk scarf, was a letter. Unsent. Addressed to Lionel. I know about her. I've known for months. I don't hate you. I hate what it's doing to your calling. I see the way she looks at you. It's not love. It's possession. And she will destroy everything if you don't end it. Rourke folded the letter, tucked it into an evidence bag. Outside, cicadas buzzed in the trees, undisturbed by the storm of grief left behind. At the precinct the next morning, forensics confirmed what the footage hinted at. The bullets matched a Glock 43, common, concealable, efficient. It had been used with purpose, not panic. 3 headshots, all within 8 seconds. Training or obsession, or both. A member of the church's cleaning staff came forward. Quiet woman. Said she once found Cherise standing in the dark sanctuary after hours. She was just standing, looking at the pulpit. I asked if she needed something, and she said, "That's where God speaks to me." Gave me chills. Rourke visited Cherise's last known residence, a third-floor walk-up apartment above a shuttered nail salon. The landlord said she left 2 weeks ago. Didn't give notice. Left furniture behind. She was sweet. Quiet. But always floaty. You know. Like she was somewhere else. Inside the apartment, the air was stale. Dust patterns showed where a table and chair once stood. On the bathroom mirror, written in lipstick, "You can't kill what's divine." In the bedroom, Rourke found her Bible. Torn. Margins filled with handwritten notes, arrows, and red ink. Esther 4 verse 14, "I was born for such a time as this." Next to it, a framed photo. Cropped from the church's Easter celebration. Chase beside Lionel, eyes locked on him, her smile different, not joyful, but claimed. Back at the station, Rourke brought in the assistant choir director. She'd known both women. Cherise was magnetic, she said. You could feel her hunger for God. But after a while, it wasn't God she was singing about anymore. It was him. She paused. She told me once, he laid hands on me. Not just in the spirit. In the flesh. She hesitated. I thought she was lying. Just trying to feel special. The deeper Rourke dug, the more a twisted narrative emerged, a theology twisted into obsession, worship turned erotic. In Cherise's journals, she wrote of being spiritually married to Lionel, of dreams where Vanessa dissolved in smoke, of visions of herself preaching at his side while crowds bowed to her voice. But the line between spiritual calling and delusion was blurred. When Lionel broke things off, according to one staff member, Cherise had a breakdown. She said God told her rejection was rebellion, that the true wife would be revealed soon. 3 days before the murders, Cherise visited the church office. Security footage caught her outside, waiting, watching, but never going in. On Saturday, she bought bleach, gloves, and a prepaid phone. On Sunday, she came back to the church she believed belonged to her. Rourke stood over the evidence board that night, string lines, photos, crime scene reports. And dead in the center, Cherise's photo, eyes soft, mouth closed in a knowing smile. He said to no one in particular, she didn't just kill them. She believed she was cleansing something. And somewhere out there, she was still free. Still convinced she was righteous. That was the part that chilled him most. The motel room smelled like ammonia and sadness. Detective Desmond Rourke stood in the doorway, one hand on his holster, the other lifting the yellowed curtain as sunlight pierced the room's stillness. On the bed lay a hotel Bible with torn pages. Next to it, a cheap burner phone, no SIM card, just a trail of deleted messages and one audio recording still intact. He hit play. A woman's voice whispered, "I have washed the stains. I am no longer the other woman. I am the only one." Cherise Halston had been there. Registered under a fake name, stayed only 2 nights. She paid cash. Left no fingerprints. But her presence lingered like a stain in the air. In the motel's bathroom trash can, Rourke found a church bulletin from Eastland Deliverance, crumpled and smudged with lipstick. Tucked inside it was a black and white photo of Pastor Lionel, his face circled in red ink. Above the circle, in jagged pen, "My husband in heaven and on earth." Later that afternoon, a tip came in from a gas station 80 miles south. A cashier recognized Cheris's photo. Said she'd been there hours earlier, barefoot, buying bottled water and duct tape. She'd spoken softly, like she was in a trance. She asked if we had any communion wine, the cashier said. When I told her no, she just smiled. The trail was warm now. Rourke returned to his car and flipped open the file he'd been reading during lunch. A psychological profile from Dr. Elise Manning, a forensic psychologist he'd worked with before. She exhibits classic erotomania, the report read. The belief that a powerful figure, often spiritual or social, is in love with the subject. Any rejection is interpreted not as refusal, but as betrayal. Dangerous when spiritual delusion and romantic fixation blend. She will not see herself as a criminal. She sees herself as chosen. At 2:47 a.m. the next morning, Cherise appeared at a midnight service 30 miles away. A church deacon recognized her and called 911 from the back pew. By the time police arrived, she was gone. But she'd left behind something chilling, her peach dress, soaked in bleach, folded on the pulpit. Rourke stared at the crime scene photos. She's baptizing her guilt, he said under his breath. A pattern began to form. Cherise wasn't hiding randomly. She was revisiting churches, not to escape justice, but to declare it. In her mind, every abandoned sanctuary was a stepping stone to a twisted resurrection. They found her next hideout in an old mission house behind a shuttered gospel radio station. Candles were still burning. A Bible sat open on a desk beside a small, blood-stained cloth, possibly from her wounds or someone else's. No one knew. On the wall, scrawled in charcoal, were the words, "And the false wife shall fall, and the house will be made holy once again." She was preaching to herself. Rourke brought in Lionel's former assistant pastor, a man who'd once studied seminary with him. He hadn't spoken publicly since the murders. She didn't love him, the man said, voice tight. She consumed him. He tried to end it quietly, gave her a recommendation letter, told her to leave town, rebuild. But I think he underestimated what she believed they were. He paused. She didn't see herself as the affair. She saw herself as the replacement. On day 6 of the manhunt, Chase made contact, not with police, but with Sister Noreen, an elderly church member who'd once mentored her in youth ministry. She showed up at the woman's home just after dusk, barefoot again, asking for tea. She didn't look crazed, Sister Noreen later told Rourke, clutching her rosary. She looked saved, like she believed she'd done the right thing. Cherise confessed everything to her, but not as a crime, as a sacrifice. She said the boy had to die first, that his innocence was bound to the mother. If he lived, her grip would remain. Then she said, "But the husband was mine. He died already when he betrayed our covenant." The tea had been steeped long before the officers arrived. By the time they pulled up, Cherise had vanished again, leaving only footprints and a burned envelope in the fireplace. The envelope was addressed to the true wife. Inside, half-charred, was a copy of Vanessa's unsigned separation letter. Later that night, Rourke sat in the dark, going through Cherise's old voicemail archive, left on a second burner phone they'd recovered at the mission house. One stood out. She was crying. "I waited for you in the chapel. I sang the song you liked. I wore the scarf you blessed. And still, you chose her. If she won't move, I will move her." The wind howled outside. Rourke closed his eyes. The horror wasn't just in the killing. It was in how sacred she thought it all was. The next day, the final break came. Security footage from a pawn shop showed Cherise trading in a ring. The same gold band Lionel's secretary remembered him gifting to a special choir member years ago. Hush hush. Untraceable. She was smiling in the video. Calm. Proud. The receipt had a name, and Livingston, another alias. And her location, Monroe County. That night, Rourke rolled through the storm in an unmarked cruiser. The road stretched long and empty, lined by fog and pine. Up ahead was a small, white chapel by a river bend. Lights on. Door ajar. And inside, someone was singing. The chapel was still, save for the sound of singing. A slow, whispery version of blessed assurance. Detective Desmond Rourke pushed the door open. The hinges groaned. The smell of melting candles and damp wood hung thick in the air. Cherise Halston stood at the front, barefoot on the pulpit. A long white sheet draped over her shoulders like a robe. She didn't look surprised to see him. "You're late," she said softly, hands out like she was welcoming an altar call. "I already gave my confession. Just not to you." Rourke didn't lift his gun. He didn't need to. She didn't flinch. She stepped down slowly, carefully, her eyes wide. "You can't put chains on prophecy, but you can try." She offered her wrists. Rourke cuffed her in silence. She didn't resist. As he led her outside, she looked up at the stars and whispered, "He'll rise again. The three of us, we'll be reunited." She meant Lionel, Vanessa, Jalen. She thought they were waiting for her. The arrest sent shockwaves across the state. Churches held vigils. Talk radio turned prophetic delusion into daytime debate. Cherise was placed under psychiatric observation for 72 hours before arraignment. She refused to speak to lawyers, therapists, or even her cousin. But she sang. Constantly. Hymns mostly. Some originals. All unnervingly peaceful. Prosecutors debated whether to charge for all three murders separately or try them as a single spiritual massacre. In the end, the DA decided, 3 murders. 3 victims. 3 lives. 3 verdicts. The courtroom was packed. Public, press, pastors. Vanessa's sister clutched a folded program from the funeral service and didn't stop crying for 2 straight hours. Cherise walked in wearing a navy jumpsuit, her hair now undone, curls loose and free. She looked at the jury as if she already forgave them. Her court-appointed attorney entered a plea of not guilty by reason of mental illness. She smiled. "Not guilty, because I was obedient." The judge asked her to remain silent. She hummed instead. The prosecution opened with bodycam footage of the crime scene, Rourke's testimony, the autopsy findings, and most damning, the recordings. Her voice, her own words. Not rage. Revelation. She was not out of control, the DA said. She was in control of her own doctrine. And she decided 3 people had to die to fulfill it. They showed the journal pages, the rewrites of scripture, the passages that turned Jalen into a sacrificial heir, Vanessa into the counterfeit wife, and Lionel into a king misled by the flesh. On day 4 of the trial, Rourke took the stand. He was calm. Collected. As always. She didn't see this as a crime, he told the courtroom. She saw it as a calling. He paused, looked at the jury. That's what makes her dangerous. Because she thinks God is still proud of her. The defense brought in a psychologist, someone who diagnosed Cherise with acute delusional disorder compounded by religious trauma and abandonment. She believes Lionel chose her not because she was attractive, but because she was predestined. To her, this wasn't about seduction. It was about scripture. On cross, the prosecutor asked one chilling question. If she believes God told her to kill, who's to say she won't hear him again? Cherise asked to speak. The judge denied her at first, but later granted a controlled statement. She stepped forward, looked at Vanessa's sister, looked at the ceiling. "I loved him," she said. "And God knows that love is not always gentle. Sometimes it cleanses. Sometimes it costs. They are not dead. They are fulfilled." A gasp swept the courtroom. She smiled. "Don't you get it? I was the prophecy, not the punishment." The jury deliberated for 2 days. Guilty on all 3 counts. Sentencing, life without parole. During the victim impact statements, Jalen's youth coach broke down sobbing. He could have been anything. An architect. A poet. A man with his father's voice. And you silenced him. Vanessa's sister could barely speak through tears. She knew. She knew my sister was trying to leave. That she was finally choosing herself. And that's what scared her. Not sin. Not shame. But the thought of being left behind. When the judge handed down the sentence, Cherise closed her eyes and mouthed a prayer. May the gates open to me still. No one answered. Weeks later, Rourke visited the sanctuary. It had reopened. New pastor. New pews. But the same morning light bled through the stained glass window where Lionel once stood. He sat in the back, alone, and whispered to the silence. She didn't kill out of rage. She killed out of belief. And sometimes, that's worse. As he stood to leave, a child's laughter echoed down the hallway. It was just a Sunday again. But the floor beneath the pulpit still bore a faint, discolored stain, where faith, lust, and obsession bled together.